Welcome back, everybody. So what we're gonna do today is go through some codexes. Be free to fast forward some of this, but we're gonna go ahead and read some of these. We're gonna start with some creatures, and if we reread these, I apologize. I was reading them and then realized my mic wasn't on, so we're gonna do this again. So. First one, creatures, Mabari Warhound. Dogs are an essential part of Ferelden's culture, and no dog is more prized than the Mabari. The breed is old as myth, said to have been bred from wolves who served Dane. Prized for their intelligence and loyalty, these dogs are no more than mere weapons or status symbols. The hounds choose their master and pair them with them for life. To be the master of a Mabari anywhere in Ferelden is to be recognized instantly as a person of worth. The Mabari are an essential part of Ferelden's military strategy. Trained hounds can easily pull knights from horseback or break lines of pikemen, and the sight and sound of waves of war dogs howling and snarling has been known to cause panic even from the most hardened infantry soldiers. Alright, rat. What are you, mad? Even the most giant of rats isn't going to present that much of a problem to any larger than a cat. Even the stories in the archives that tell of blighted touched rats still only contribute them with the ability to spread the blight. The rats themselves got no larger than perhaps 3 feet in length, covered in sharp bony spikes and boils. Disturbing, certainly, but dangerous? This is no fantasy conjured by young man. You have much more important creatures to concern yourself with. The transcripts of a lecture given by Nala, senior enchanter of Hosberg, 844 Blessed. Note, she was later eaten by a blighted rat in 846 Blessed. Alright, magic. Alright, magic and religion. Andraste, bride of the Maker. There was once a tiny village on the waking sea that was set upon by Deventer Imperium, which enslaved the villagers to be sold in the markets of Minrathous, leaving behind only the old and the infirm. One of the captives was a child, Andraste. She was raised into slavery in a foreign land. She escaped, then made her long and treacherous journey back to her homeland alone. She rose from nothing to be the wife of an Amaranthine warlord. Each day she sang to the gods, asking them to help her people who remained slaves in Deventer. The false gods of the mountains and the winds did not answer her, but the true God did. The Maker spoke. He showed her all the works of his hand, the Fade, the world, and all the creatures therein. He showed her how men had forgotten him, lavishing devotions upon mute idols and demons, and how he had left them to their fate. But her voice had reached him, and so captivated him that he had offered her a place at his side, that she might rule all the creations. But Andraste would not forsaken her people. She begged the Maker to return to save his children from the cruelty of the Imperium. Reluctantly, the Maker agreed to give men another chance. Andraste went back to tell her husband, Mathra, I could never say his name right, and told him all that the Maker had revealed to her. Together, they rallied the Amarante, and marched forth against the Mage Lord of the Imperium, and the Maker was with them. The Maker's sword was created itself, fire and flood, fame and earthquake. Everywhere they went, Andraste sang to her people of the Maker, and they heard her. The ranks of Andraste's followers grew. They were a vast tidal washing over the Imperium. And when Martha saw that the people loved Andraste and not him, a worm grew within his heart, gnawing upon it. At last the armies of Andraste and Martha stood before the gates of Minrathous, but Andraste was not with them. For Mathra had schemed in secret to hand Andraste over to the Deventer. For this, the Archon would give Mathra all the lands to the south of the Waking Sea. And so, before all the armies of Amaranthi and of Deventer, Andraste was tied to a stake and burned while her earthly husband turned his armies aside into nothing, for his heart had been devoured. But as he watched the pyre, the Archon softened. He took pity on Andraste and drew his sword and granted her the mercy of a quick death. The Maker wept for his beloved, cursed Mathrath, cursed mankind for betrayal, and turned once again from creation, taking only Andraste with him. And Our Lady sits still at his side, where she still urges him to take pity on his children. From the sermons of Justina II. The chant of light, the blighted. No matter their power, their triumph, the mage lord of Deventer were men and doomed to die. Then a voice whispered within their hearts, "Shall you surrender your power to time like the beasts of fields? You are the lords of the earth. Go forth to claim the empty throne of the heaven and be a god, and be gods." In secret they worked, magic upon magic, all their power and all their vanity. They turned against the veil until at last it gave away. Above them, a river of light. Before them, the throne of heaven, waiting. Beneath their feet, the footprints of the Maker, and all around them echoed a vast of silence. But when they took a single step towards the empty throne, a great voice cried out, shaking the very foundation of heaven and earth. "And so is the golden city blackened with each step you take in my hall. Marvel at perfection, for it is fleeting. You have brought sin to heaven, and doom upon all the world." Violently were they cast down, for no mortal may walk body in the realm of dreams, bearing the mark of their crimes, bodies so mimicked and distorted that none shall see them and know them for men. Deep into the earth they fled, away from the light. In darkness's eternity they searched for those who had gold them on, until at last they found their prize, their god, their betrayer, their sleeping dragon Dumat, their tainted, twisted, even the false gods, and the whisper awoke at last in pain and horror, and led them to wreak havoc upon all the nations of the world. The first blight, from Tenedores 8. The commandments of the Maker. The truths the Maker has revealed to me. As there is but one world, one life, one death, there is but one God, and He is our Maker. There are sinners who have given their love to false gods. Magic exists to serve man and never rule over him. Fallen and corrupt are they who have taken his gift and turned it against his children. They shall be named Malefica, accursed one. They shall find no rest in this world or beyond. All men are the works of our Maker's hands, from the lowest slaves to the highest kings, those who to bring harm without provocation to the least of his children, and hate and uncurrently by the Maker. Those who bear false witnesses and work to deceive others. Know this: there is but one truth. All things are known to our Maker, and He shall judge their lies. All things in this world are infinite. What one man gains, another has lost. Those who steal from their brothers and sisters do harm to their livelihoods and to their peace of mind. Our Maker sees this with a heavy heart. Transliteration 1:1/5. Okay. The Maker. There was no words for heaven or earth or for sea or sky. All that existed was silence. Then the voice of the Maker rang out the first word, and his word became all the might be. Dream and ideas, hopes and fears, endless possibilities, and from it he made his firstborn. And he said to them, in my image I forgive you. To you I give dominion over all that exists, but your will, may all things be done. Then in the center of heaven he called forth a city with towers of gold, streets with music of cobblestone, and the banners which flew without wind. There he dwelled, waiting to see the wonders his children would create. The children of the Maker gathered before his golden throne and sang hymns of praises unending, but their songs were the songs of cobblestones. Shone with gold lights reflected from the Maker's throne. They held forth their banners that flew on their own. And the voice of the Maker shook the fades, saying, in my image I have wrought my firstborn. You have been given dominion over all that exists, but your will, all things are done. Yet you do nothing. The realm I give you is formless, ever-changing. And he knew he had wrought amiss, so the Maker turned from his firstborn, and took from the fade a measure of its living flesh, and placed it apart from the spirits, and spoke to it, saying, here I decreed opposition in all things, for earth, sky, for winter, summer, for darkness, light. By my will alone is a balance surrender, and the world is given new life. And no longer was it formless, ever-changing, but it held a fast, immutable. With words for heaven and for earth, sea and sky, at last did the Maker from the living world make men, immutable as the substance of the earth, with a soul made of dreams and ideas, hopes and fears, and endless possibilities. Then the Maker said, to you, my second-born, I grant this gift. In your heart shall burn an unquestionable flame, all-consuming and never satisfied. From the fade I crafted you, and to the fade you shall return each night in dreams, that you will always remember me. And then the Maker sealed the gate of the golden city, and there he dwelled, waiting to see the wonders his children would create. Therides 5:1-8. All right, let's see. So we are at culture and history. I'm going to take a drink here and we'll continue. Well, at least the dog's not barking now, but she's sitting behind me and farting. Wow. Anyway. Okay, so history of Ferelden, Chapter 1. Ferelden, as we think of it now, did not exist before the Exiled Age. Instead, there was a valley divided up into dozens of old Amaranthine clans. They were warred constantly with each other over land, honor, the allegiance of the freeholders, and on one notable occasion, the name was given to a favorite Mbari. And then in the 33rd year of the Exiled Age, Calahan Thrain became Tarn of Denerim, and everything changed. Most of what we know about the founding of our nation comes from an old song that the bards passed down through the ages. The songs are filled with wild exaggerations and outright lies, but this hardly differs from the scholarly papers of some of my contemporaries. There is no agreement among poets or scholars on how he did it, but Calahan gained the support of the Circle of Magi, and they crafted for him a suit of silvery white armor that, by all accounts, replied both arrows and blades. Callahan led his army across the valley and captured Redcliffe. One of only 3 men who ever succeeded laid siege to the fortress and presented himself to the Bane of the Landsmeet as their king. The poets tell us that every lord knelt before Callahan without question. In fact, that he had attended the Landsmeet surrounded by ash warriors and loyal mages of the circle is generally omitted from the ballads, however. From Callahan came the line of the Thorn kings and queens who reigned uninterrupted until the 44th year of the Blessed Age, when the Elysian invasion came. The rightful king was forced to flee Denmark, and for 70 years a puppet sat upon the throne. From Ferelden, Folklore and History by Sister Petrine, Chantry Scholar. History of Ferelden, Chapter 2. The occupation was a dark blot on Ferelden's history. Our people, who from time immemorial valued their freedom over all else, were forced to bow to Elysian rule. The Empire declared our elves property and sold them like cattle. Chauvin routinely plundered freeholders of coin, food, and even women and children, and excused it as taxation. And for 70 years, no Landsmeet were held, for the imperial throne had declared our ancient laws a form of treason. King Brown was one of those escaped. He tried to organize other fugitive lords to retake their lands, but Branner was neither clever nor persuasive, and the nobles preferred to take their chances alone. Ferelden might still be a little more than a territory of empire were it were not the fact that his daughter had all the charisma that her royal father lacked. The rebel queen's rule began with midnight attack on the imperial army at Lothering. It was swift and successful, and with their plifer arms, the rebels began a campaign against the Orlesian in earnest. But the turning point of the war came when a young freeholder joined the Queen's army. The lad, Logain MacTier, possessed a remarkable talent for strategy and quickly became the favorite advisor of the young Prince Merrick. The Queen finally died at the hands of the Elysian sympathizers, anxious to curry favor with their painted masters, and Merrick took her place as leader of the rebellion. Logain became Merrick's right hand. Merrick and Logain led the rebels in a new campaign against their Elysian oppressors, culminating in Battle of the River of Dane, where the last Chevalier and Denmark were crushed. With the capital once more in the hands of Ferelden, the battle to free our people was finally over, but the battle to rebuild what had been lost had only just begun. From Ferelden, Folklore and History by Sister Petrine, Chantry Scholar. Culture of Ferelden. The Fereldens are puzzled. As a people, they are bad day away from reverting to barbarism. They repel invasions from Deventer during the height of the Imperium with nothing but dogs and their own abstain disposition. They are the coarse, willful, dirty, disorganized people who somehow give raise to our prophet, ushered in an era of enlightenment, and toppled the greatest empire in history. There are a few things you can assume safely in dealing with these people. First, they value loyalty above all things, beyond wealth, beyond power, beyond reason. Second, although they have nothing in their entire country which you are likely to think at all remarkable, they are extremely proud of their accomplishments. Third, if you insult their dogs, they are likely to declare war. And finally, the surest signs that you have underestimated the Fereldens is that you think you have come to understand them. Empress Celine I of Olay, in a letter to her newly appointed ambassador to Denmark. Dogs in Ferelden. I am frequently asked during my travels in other lands to explain the dog omnipresent in Ferelden. Inevitably, I tell my foreign questioners that there are no more dogs in my homeland than in their own. In every civilized corner of Thedas, an astute observer will notice dogs employed in hunting games, keeping barns and storehouses free of vermin, herding livestock, guarding homes, and in every use as a beast of burden in the mountains. It is simply that Ferelden show appreciation for their work that our dogs do, and perhaps that's the reason for that is tangled up in the mythology. Heifer, the first man to be named Tern, the hero who united our Amaranthian ancestors to drive back the darkspawn of the Second Blight, was reputed to be the son of a werewolf. Now, perhaps this is meant to be some comment on his temperament, or simply a way to make a great man even larger than life. But more than a half of the noble families of Ferelden claim to be descendants of Hector, and consequently, many of our people believe that they are some distant kingship with wolves. It's only a good manners to be polite to one's king. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, Travels of a Chantry Scholar by Brother Gentivi. Alright, Geography of Ferelden. The Kingdom of Ferelden is the southernmost civilization in Thedas, although some scholars dispute the claim to civilization. It is perhaps the most physical, isolated of all kingdoms of Thedas, to the east of Amaranthine's Ocean, to the north of the Waking Sea, and to the south of the Kokori Wilds, which in the summer months are a vast past bog, and in the winter became a treacherous labyrinth of ice over waterways. The Frostback Mountains guard the western border, and only a narrow plain seems to be between the mountains and the sea allow to travel between Ferelden and Olay. Most of the lands in the central portion of the kingdom, called Benor, is open plains. These are remnants of ancient adventure highway that once connected the Valar with Ostagar, on the edge of Kokori Wilds. The western part of the Ferelden is dominated by Lake Callahan, a huge crater filled with a runoff of glaciers from the nearby mountains. Lake Callahan, home to the flame fortress of the Red Cliff, as well as the Circle Tower, which houses Ferelden's Circle of Magi. In the east is a vast Brazilian forest, which the superstition locals profess to be haunted, and from which rise the Dragon Peaks, a solitary mountains guarded in the capital city of Denerim. In the Pursuit of Knowledge, the Travels of a Chantry Scholar by Brother Gentivi. Alright. Politics of Ferelden. To our neighbors, Ferelden seems utterly chaotic. Unlike our Mantradics, power does not descend from our throne, rather it rises from support of freeholders. Each freeholders choose the Benor and Arl to whom it pays allegiance to. Typically, this choice is based on proximity of freeholders to the Lord's castle, as it's worth to pay for the upkeep of soldiers who are willing to arrive at your lands too late to defend it. For the most part, each generation of freeholders casts its lot with the same band as their fathers did, but things can and do change. No formal oaths are sworn, and it is not unheard of, especially with the prickly central Benor, for bands to control freeholders away from their neighbors, a practice in which inevitably begets feuds that last for ages. Terrans roam from amongst the bands war leaders who, in antiquity, has grown powerful enough to move other bands to swear fealty to them. There may be Terrans in the day before King Callahan, but he succeeded in whittling them down to only two, Gren in the south and Highever to the north. These Terrans still hold an oath of bands and Arls who they can call upon in an event of war or disaster. And similarly, the Terrans still hold responsibility for defending those sworn to them. The Arls were established by the Terrans, given the command of strategy fortress that they could not oversee by the Terrans themselves. Unlike Terrans, the Arls have no bands sworn to them, and are simply somewhat more prestigious bands. The King is, in essential, the most powerful of Terrans, although Darenum was originally the Terran of the King. It has since been reduced to Arling, and as King's domain is now all Ferelden, but even the King's power must come from a band. Nowhere is this more evident than during the Landsmeet, an annual council for which all the nobles of Ferelden gather, held for almost 3,000 years except the odd interruption during the Blight and invasions. The sight of the King asking for, and working to win, the support of lesser men is a source of constant wonder for foreign ambassadors. From Ferelden, Folklore and History by Sister Patrine, Chantley Scholar. I believe we read High Ever. I don't know if we read this. Let's just read these. Continue. Highever. Castle Highever has stood since the Divine Age, when it is not independent Benor, but merely an outpost of the growing Benor of Amaranthine. In the days of Amaranthine became Ireland itself. The outpost of Highever was originally held by a esteemed family, cousins of Howes. In the Age of Towers, however, Baron Corot Estein was murdered by his wife Flemeth, thus ending the bloodline. Cornabar, captain of the guard, Sigrun Cuslan, took the lands and titles. The Clusen declared their independence from Amaranthine, starting a war that lasted 30 years. When the dust settled, Higher was on its own and in a possession of half of the lands that once been southwest Amaranthine. Highever became a Terran during the Black Age, when Hielcuslan gathered the lords together under her banner and drove the werewolves out of their lands, earning herself a title of Tierna, almost as an afterthought. Today, Highever is the only two remaining Tiernas, making the Cuslan family's second rank, only to the king. From Ferelden, Folklore and History by Sister Patrine Chandler. I think this is pretty interesting. Conabarb was precisely Highever, which put Flemeth at that. Now, this was years after Morgan was, born, but I don't think that would put her in Highever's royalty for Morgan. But it's interesting because, Flemeth didn't, marry into it, but I highly doubt that, she was anything worth other than a bard at that point. Interesting to hear your thoughts on that, and have a clean and fun discussion about that. Alright, so the noble families of Ferelden. The occupation left empty castles in its wake. Whole families were butchered in the initial invasion, and all those who could not or would not bend a knee to the Empire's puppet king were declared traitors and hunted. Many bloodlines ended as severe blades at the dusty roads, in the forest clearings, or in freeholds. And then there were the turncoats. To curry favor with their new master, some nobles took up arms against their brothers. They betrayed and murdered the rebel queen, and created even more vacant titles and lands. Once King Merrick exacted justice. The Freellands did not fall apart after the Elysian left, a testament to their strength of King Merrick. The old family still held grudges against those who had sided with the Empire, and those new families that had been granted titles were viewed as interlopers. The lands meet that followed Merrick's coronations were tense, to say the least. From Ferelden Folklore and History by Sister Patrine, Chantry Scholar. I believe that was it on that. No. Okay. First it was dogs, now we got a cat. Alright. Darkspawn. Those who have sought to claim heaven by violence destroyed it. What was golden and pure turned black. Those who once had been mage lords, the brightest of their age, but no longer men, but monsters. 30s, 12:1. Sin was the midwife that ushered the Darkspawn into this world. The Ministers fell from the Golden City and fated to encompass all the worlds, for they are not alone. No one knows where the Darkspawn comes from, a dark mockery of men in the darkest place they thrived, growing in numbers as the plague of locusts will. In the raids, they were often the captives, dragging their victims alive to the deep roads, but most evidence suggests that they are eaten. Like spiders, it seems Darkspawn prefer their food still breathing. Perhaps they are simply spawned by the darkness. Certainly we know that evil has no trouble perpetuating itself. The last blight was in the Age of Towers, striking once again in the heart of Deventer, spreading south to Olay and to the east of the Free Marches. The plague spread as far as Ferelden, but withered and twisting of the land stopped well beyond our borders. Here, Darkspawn have never been more than the stuff of legends. In the northern lands, however, particular Deventer and the Anifels, they are said Darkspawn are hunted to the hinterlands, preying on outlying farmers and isolated villages, a constant threat. Alright, from Ferelden, Folklore and History by Sister Patrine, Chantley Scholar. Alright, and we have read these. I'm not gonna really read this notes unless they pertain to something and not to controllers. Alright, I'm just gonna pause this Codex entry and then we'll continue on here.